Help support the show by joining the Patreon or becoming a YouTube member. Also, hit that like button and subscribe if you want more Browns-focused content.
If you've watched this channel for any bit of time this season, especially when the final injury report comes out, you know that there have been a few sticking points that I have had with the injury report, right? When Jack Conklin was constantly on it, which, hey, shout out to Jack Conklin. He doesn't even have a status this week. Awesome for him. I said, hey, you got to look for the full practice. If he doesn't get a full practice, he's not going to play. The other thing that I've been telling people to look at is not the Myles Garrett, Mike Hall. Mike Hall, and this weird thing going on with him and his injury is something that I have been asking questions about for a very, very long time. I brought this up before training camp. I brought this up during training camp. I brought this up during the beginning portions of the season. And now that we're entering week 6 and Mike Hall is still out, now more people are catching up and asking the same questions that I've been asking about Mike Hall all season. It's strange what is going on here, right? And look, I don't want to speculate on why it is that Mike Hall is not playing. I feel like that's very unfair to Mike Hall. I feel like that's very unfair to the Browns. But the reality is that the Browns are not addressing this publicly. And now it's a weird enough situation to where there's no benefit of the doubt that can be given. So people are just kind of forced to speculate. So one, I think, and this is just my personal, public relations advice. If you were the Cleveland Browns, I think it benefits you to say something officially about Mike Hall's injury status, whether there was a setback or something else, instead of leaving it up in the dark. Because the people who cover this team aren't stupid, or I would like to think so. The people who pay attention to this team aren't stupid, and the fans that pay attention to this team aren't stupid. And this is one of those things where it's like, hey, everybody can notice that this is strange. Now, you might be asking me, why do I think this is so strange? I'll walk you through my process here, and you can tell me what you think of it, but I'm just sharing with you my work on why I think this is very strange. So it goes all the way back to the exit interview for last season. Remember, Mike Hall got hurt at the end of the year. I believe it was the final game of the year. Now, there were mixed reports on what it was, right? A lot of people said it was meniscus injury or whatever it is, and that it wasn't as serious. And then Andrew Berry, in his press conference at the end of the year, mentioned that he expects to have Mike Hall back by training camp. And then we get to OTAs, we get to mini camps. Everything is going along that line. And then, you start to hear the reports that, hey, the Browns expect Mike Hall to be on PUP to start camp, which was a change from where they were at the exit interview. Now we get to this point. Well, not to this point. Now we get to training camp. We're in training camp. We haven't seen Mike Hall the first week. Okay, yeah, he's on PUP. We don't see Mike Hall that second week. Okay, yeah, he's on PUP. We don't see Mike Hall the third week, the fourth week, the fifth week, the sixth week of training camp. A little strange, right? Got on the exercise bike at the end, but it's a little strange. So 53-man cutdowns come, and we're all expecting that Mike Hall is going to be on PUP because he hasn't practiced all training camp. But then they do the 53-man cutdown, and they put Mike Hall on the active roster instead on a injury reservation because he passed his physical. Interesting, right? So Mike Hall passes his physical. We get to week 1. We're thinking, hey, Mike Hall might play week 1. He doesn't play. Mike Hall passes, again, Mike Hall, week 2. We're thinking, hey, he might play. He doesn't play week 2. Now I'm like, okay, now this is getting strange, right? This is getting even stranger, right? A guy that you thought would be back for training camp, that you didn't said, hey, he's going to be back for the beginning of the season. And now we're at the beginning of the season and he's still not back. Well, what's going on here? We get to week 3. He's not playing. This is where I rung the alarm, where I'm like, okay, this is officially strange. You need to address this week 3, because the idea of putting a player on PUP is that when you put them on PUP, you're saying, hey, they can't play the first 4 weeks, but they won't take up a roster spot. Now, Mike Hall missed 3 games at that point. I'm like, well, it doesn't even make sense if you're just going to bring him back for 1 game to have not put him on PUP at that point. The math out there just doesn't really ring out, especially when you've had injuries at other positions. You've had to sign like 3 offensive linemen in that time period. It just doesn't make sense to have a roster spot held up for Mike Hall if he's not going to be able to play, or if he's only going to be able to play one of the weeks that he wouldn't have been able to play anyways. You get to week 4, he still doesn't play. Matter of fact, his injury status has been static since about week 2, right? There was 1 week where he went from limited practices to no practicing, which was strange. And then now he's back to just practicing limited all week. And then you get to week 4, week 5. Now we're here, week 6, he's still not playing. The timeline has shifted 3 separate times with Mike Hall since he's gotten an injury. Now, there might be a really, really good reason for that, right? I can think of a countless number of examples. The one that comes to my head is J.K. Dobbins, right? When he was in Baltimore, had a situation like this where, they thought he was going to be back. He wasn't back. He left to get cleanup surgery on the knee that he had injured the year prior, and did not come back until that he had rehabbed from that cleanup surgery. And I'm wondering if this is a situation where maybe the surgery that Mike Hall had, they discovered down the line had some complications, and it's affecting his ability to feel like he can return to play, which is fine. And maybe he's considering getting a cleanup surgery or something along the line, scope or something like that, right? Like that might be the case there with this. Maybe this is a case where Mike Hall and the Browns very differently on where his status is to play right now. Either way, whatever's going on can no longer be denied that it's strange. Now, look, when I rung the alarms about this at the beginning of the season, people told me to shut up. And in week 3, people are like, I think you're making too big of a deal out of one roster spot. Well, now we're at week 6. He would have, if he was on PUP, he would be eligible to come back right now. And he has not played. He has not even had a full practice, which is even stranger, right? It's strange that he didn't get a full practice in while he was in that 4-week window. Now it's even stranger. So what is going on with Mike Hall? Is there a complication there? Was there a setback? Is this just a disagreement between 2 parties? Because whatever it is, they clearly do not want to communicate that to the public, which I think makes people naturally inclined to speculate the worst things possible, which is to say, people are out here saying that Mike Hall just don't want to play. I don't know if that's the case. I will never assume that that is the case with the football player, right? I will always assume that a football player wants to play football unless they have made it abundantly clear that they don't want to play football, because I don't want to have to be out here questioning people's heart like that. That's just not, I don't feel like I get remotely enough information about these folks to be out here questioning somebody's heart like that. You know what I mean? That's a serious thing. I know how I would feel if I were in that situation. Somebody started to question things like that about me and they ain't even know me, so I'm not going to go there. I don't think that's the case, but something is up. And I just would like them to let us know which version of it is. If you can't tell us because there is truly something funky going on here, then that's really bad. But if you can, please enlighten us, because I feel like being in the dark here is only going to make people assume the worst possible thing. And look, maybe they don't care. Maybe they don't care if people don't feel like great about this whole thing with Mike Hall, or don't feel great about Mike Hall. But teams hire public relations managers and public relations professionals for a reason. This is part of that reason. I just see no reason why this should be unaddressed. I don't see the benefit on the field of leaving it unaddressed. I don't see the benefit in the public space for it being unaddressed. Maybe up until this point, not addressing it was fine with them because it was only me in my chair on the internet making a big huff and puff about this. But now more and more people are looking at this and going, something's not right there, right? Maybe people start to actually ask questions to Kevin Stefanski about this in the press conference. Maybe this starts to become more of a topic. Hey, what is going on? I think this is a bigger story. I don't know. I don't have the resources to dig into it myself, right? But I feel like there's a bigger story here, because this is not the first time that we have seen something like this pop up with a Cleveland Browns player and the Cleveland Browns staff when it comes to injury. This has been a constant sticking point with this team in injury, right? Whether it be the variety that you got where they thought Baker Mayfield was way more injured than Baker Mayfield wanted to admit, but Baker still played, or you could go back to the Deshaun Watson shoulder surgery stuff where there was some kind of weird denial about what was actually going on for like 3-4 weeks there. We could even bring it back to the Jed Will stuff from last year at the end of the season, the weird Jed Will stuff at the beginning of the season, the weird DeJuan Jones stuff at the beginning of the season, the constantly weird Jack Conklin stuff. Like, this has piled up to a point to where I feel like the Mike Hall thing is the big canary in the coal mine to tell you, hey, something's not right here. They got rid of all of their training staff and then replaced them with new hires, but still within that training staff promoted from within. So I don't know if there was an overhaul here. I think there was just some changes in personnel. And what I'm seeing right now doesn't really feel like an overhaul. So what is actually going on there? I think it would benefit them to let us know something. I don't think letting us know nothing is a good idea, but I'm just me. Just an asshole in a chair that notices stuff. You know, maybe I'm just making a big deal out of nothing, but feels like something's here. I'm not trying to speculate. I hope that has come through clearly in this video, where I have avoided trying to speculate. I know some people are going to be reckless on it, right? Just out the bat, just start speculating. The comment section is going to be full of people speculating. I urge people not to do that. I don't think that's helpful, but I can't blame people for doing it when the team is offering no explanation of something that clearly needs an explanation, and they've done this so many times. Can't really blame folks. Can't really blame folks. We got more to talk about, but before I do, I want to thank my sponsor for today, Sleeper. Real quick, just want to let you guys know Sleeper has a new offer here. They're offering a free $20 entry, no deposit required, and also, if you're a first-time user, you also will receive a 100% match on up to $100 when you use the promo code WORSTTAKE. Again, $20 free, no deposit required. Plus, first-time users also receive 100% deposit match up to $100. Join Sleeper. All right. So other than the weird Mike Hall stuff, the injury report news is actually pretty good for the Cleveland Browns. The only player with a status coming into this game is Mike Hall. So everything else is good, right? Everybody had full practices. Demonte Casey was limited today, but he seems to be without a status, so that's good. Everybody else, full participants in practice, other than obviously Mike Hall and then Demonte Casey. So really good stuff there. If you're wondering what it is on the Pittsburgh side of things, they pretty much have everybody back, and they might even get Jalen Ramsey back this week. No Calvin Austin for them, but we'll get Jalen Ramsey back, or have the chance to get Jalen Ramsey back. He was a DNP for 2 days, then a full practice on Friday. I feel like I've I've had to talk about Pittsburgh enough in my media career to know that means he's playing, right? He's going to probably play unless there's a setback when they work him out before the game. So I would expect Jalen Ramsey to be out there this week. Maybe they're cautious because they really don't think they need him this week. The Browns don't have a ton of wide receivers. So maybe they play it safe and just don't play him. But I think he's going to play. I don't think you give him a full practice if you don't think he's going to play. Limited practice, then I would be like, hey, it's more on the fence that he doesn't. Other bits of news, right? We talked about the Browns waffling on this whole backup quarterback thing. Update to that story, they have made Shedeur Sanders the backup to Dylan Gabriel. It was strange that they waffled on this. I'm going to be honest with you, right? Like, it doesn't send the best message of confidence to me. Again, I'm speculating. I want to make this 100% clear. I'm not saying this is what happened. I'm just saying, based on the events that we have available to us, this is my interpretation of what I think could have been happening. So just take it with what you need to take it with. But the fact that they didn't just come out and outright say he's the backup, and they were like, we're going to see how he responds to this week of practice, it almost feels like they were testing him. Right? They were saying, hey, to themselves, hey, we haven't been super thrilled with what we have seen from, a behind the scenes standpoint. So let's see how he responds to potentially getting the backup job. And if he does respond positively, we'll make him the backup. If he doesn't respond positively, we won't. I can understand the desire, the urge to have to test somebody because of what happened with DTR, where you really just kind of trusted him, and he clearly was not at the point of his life where he knew how to prepare for NFL games. So yeah, I get that. You want Shedeur to do the work and everything else like that. And maybe that's what they were concerned about, is like him catching up on some of the playbook stuff, is what you've been hearing. That's what it comes off as to me. The good news is that they felt good enough about it, I'd assume, to put him as a backup. I hope they're doing this for the right reasons. I hope they're doing this because they think he's closer to being ready to play than he was at the beginning of the season. I truly hope that. What I do not want to see happen is Dylan get hurt, Shedeur go out there, and Shedeur look like a disaster. That's not going to be fun for anybody. It's not going to be fun for Shedeur. It's not going to be fun for Shedeur fans. It's not going to be fun for Browns. It's definitely not going to be fun for Browns fans. And it's not going to be fun for Kevin Stefanski, because they're not going to blame Shedeur if he looks bad. They're going to blame you, because they want to blame you already. And look, half the fan base, not even half, most of the fan base already wants to blame Kevin. Like, it's not going to be good for anybody. So if he's not ready and he's the backup, you're kind of doing your own paperwork at that point, right? So I really hope that they're making him the backup because they truly think he is ready for that opportunity. I really hope it's not a let's get him prepared. Let's get him some more motivation and make him the backup so maybe he works harder. I don't think stuff like that works. You know what I mean? If somebody's not demonstrating that they want the job before they get the job, then they ain't going to do the shit that they need to do to get the job or to keep the job long term, right? So, I hope that's not what they're doing, but we'll see. He's the backup. Hopefully that's a good sign. But that's the news coming out of Cleveland today. The Browns are healthy going into the Pittsburgh game. Shedeur is the backup quarterback. And this Mike Hall situation is just super weird. Super weird. And I think more people should talk about it because I think it's a bigger story than just Mike Hall. But y'all have a great day. Have an even better night. Peace.